And we're back with another episode of NBA Observations. It's Gerald Glassford from the Lakers Fast Break. Lakers' latest part of the Fan Arc Network, also as well the Pop Culture Gospels and Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Welcome to NBA Observations. But I always have someone alongside who provides outstanding NBA observations, and he returns another week. Great to have him back. It is, of course, the guy who just put out a great article you need to catch today at the Swab Report. It is on his OKC Thunder. It is Calif Poncy. Calif, great to have you back. Well, I was going to say talking trades, but I'm checking Twitter and it's crickets, I think is what I see right now.
Yeah, maybe it's more going to be talking some trade speculation, I guess. That's about all there is to talk about. We've been good. I don't know what's going on here. We've liked Keon Ellis on this show here, and he finally got traded, I guess. So there's that. But other than that, we're just not. There just hasn't been much going on. There's not really any rumors outside of what's going on with Giannis. I think that kind of has everything in a bit of a holding pattern, I imagine, in terms of other rumors leaking out. And but yeah, we'll give our input on the trades that have happened, even if there hasn't been very many, and maybe talk about some other stuff here.
I'm trying in my mind because I do a Lakers latest every day, and I'm trying in my mind to have to do 4 because it's based off of bracketed into 4 different categories. I'm having trouble finding those 4 different categories to go ahead on a slow day like this, but I will do it. I know I can come up with something. But as far as the NBA trade deadline, yes, it's pretty much a whimper so far. I mean, this time last year, the Lakers fans were coming off the high of Luka. And, after the Knicks game, we were like, let's check out Twitter. Anything coming up? No, nothing coming up. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but nothing so far as of yet. But you're right. Outside the Giannis speculation going on, there's not a whole lot else being talked about as far as Rumorville is concerned. But let's get into the actual trades that have taken place. The 3-team trade, I guess, of major note is between Sacramento, Chicago, and also as well Cleveland. So Cleveland looking to get off of the tax burden that they are, being in the second tax apron. Took a lot of their chunk off, like I believe
50 million.
50 million over the course of 2 years by trading DeAndre Hunter, who I said repeatedly on the show has been in the worst year of his season of his career, the worst season of his career. He is shooting terribly, not defending at a great level. Lost his job to Jalen Tyson, so he was just coming off the bench guy for them, and for the price and taxes they were paying, Cleveland decided it was not worth their time. So they saved money by sending him to Sacramento, still trying to figure out their end of it. And I think I probably will continue to trying to figure out what their end of it is, because I know sounds look like no one has been able to justify this trade from their standpoint. But in return, Cleveland gets Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis, the backups. So they basically go from the backups in Sacramento to the backups in Cleveland. And then you have also, as far as Dario Saric going to Chicago, I believe there's another player, a 2-way player involved as well, I think, to make everything meet as well. Yep. And then a couple second rounders, including a Denver second rounder that's going to Chicago. I mean, I guess, why not? If Chicago said, sure, I'll take a couple second rounders. You never know when I can use them. Yeah, but sure. Some interesting things going on there. But again, for me, it starts off with another good trade for Cleveland, because you're getting a lot of money off the books and some serviceable players in return. And for Sacramento, it's like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I really expect Ellis to take off with Cleveland, to be honest. I just think that there's been players like this, like when OKC traded, and we have not seen anywhere near this type of sample from Keon Ellis yet, but when OKC first started their rebuild, like 2021, they traded Steven Adams to New Orleans. And he kind of just like lost all his value and was seen as a bad contract in New Orleans because there's just players who aren't going to be that impactful unless they're in a winning situation. And that's kind of what Steven Adams is. And that's kind of who I think Keon Ellis is. I think Keon Ellis in this functional basketball situation where they're not going to jerk his minutes all around, I don't imagine. And he's just going to be able to know what he's doing, go out there, shoot threes, play really high level defense. I'm assuming they would be interested in getting a contract done with him, but maybe they'll wait till after the deadline as we go.
I think February 9th is when he can sign an extension for Keon Ellis. I think it's 3 years, $52 million is what the most he can sign for.
Yeah, and so if I was Cleveland, I'd offer him that. Now, and I mean, you're taking a risk maybe with the larger role. He doesn't play well, but I just think in any small bursts he's ever had when I've been watching Sacramento, I think he really feels like he felt like a winning player in a losing situation. And so I think I'd offer that if I was Cleveland when you're able, assuming that he's not rerouted. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about Giannis a little bit later. They've been kind of tertiarily mentioned as a possible shocker Giannis team. So we'll see about that. I don't necessarily think that's very, very possible or likely, but who knows? And I think this is also a pretty good spot for Schroeder. I don't necessarily love that Cleveland really downsized a lot and got a lot smaller. Hunter has his warts and he's a pretty mediocre defensive player at this point in his career. He doesn't offer a ton on that side. And if he's not hitting open threes, he's just not particularly, impactful, but he's at least big. He's 6'7", 6'8", and they go from that to, I think, 6'3", Keon Ellis, and 6'1", then a Schroeder when they already are really guard dependent with probably 6'1", Donovan Mitchell and 6'1", Darius Garland. So I don't necessarily love that. But other than that, I think these are two good players who have contributed in winning situations. And so I really like it for Cleveland. When you go to, we'll tackle the Kings last, as they always should be. And for the Bulls, this doesn't matter, but really, and if we're being honest, like Saric, I'm assuming, won't be some key rotation guy in Chicago.
Probably be waived after the trade deadline.
Yeah, I just don't necessarily. I think that makes sense if it was any team other than the Bulls. They're just so cheap. I'm wondering if they're going to pay a guy to not be on their team. That doesn't necessarily scream of Jerry Reisdorf, but that's the logical thing to do. We'll see if they actually do that, but I'm glad this seems like a positive step for them in their kind of team building process where they use themselves as a hub. All you give up is, I think maybe it was Emmanuel Miller, maybe a two-way player. You send him to Cleveland just to make the trade work. And you pick up 2 second-round picks, and those second-round picks don't seem like a lot, but then if you keep doing this, they add up, and then you can be in situations where you can almost buy late first-round picks to these teams with pick problems and give them a bunch of second-round picks just because they want to fill out their roster. Oklahoma City did that to get Dylan Jones last year. Not that one necessarily worked out, but there's at least framework for that to happen. You can use bunches of second-round picks to get players. So I really like the process for Chicago because Saric, I think, is on an expiring. At least I hope he is. And then, if they're smart, maybe they waive him and they elevate a two-way guy and kind of pick a direction here to maybe go the other way here late in the season, or maybe you keep him on and he really fits in great to their big rotation of people who don't play defense and can theoretically shoot threes but not really shoot threes. He's really a good fit for that if he decides to stick around. But on to Sacramento. This is just the latest in a line of disgraces. This makes no sense. You're already shockingly expensive for how bad you are if you're Sacramento.
They'll be a second tax apron team at this rate. If they if they did nothing, Caleb, they would be a second tax apron team. I don't know if it's early as next season, but at least I know by 27 they will be.
Yeah, like you're trending to be like you said, a heavy tax team. I watched their game against Washington last night, maybe the last 5 or 6 minutes of it after
toilet bowl, you mean?
Yes, that was it. That's what it was. That's what it marked as is on my league pass too. But before OKC Denver came on, I think I was watching the end of that game, and Zach LaVine, you think about him, and has his warts as a player. He's on way too big of a contract, but you still think like, oh, he's a good bucket getter, whatever. he was taking the worst shots at the end of this game. It was like watching someone at the rec who hasn't played in 10 years. So he's going out there and making none of them on top of it, which he used to be able to make tough shots. Maybe he still can. I just caught him on an off night, but he's a losing player. DeMar DeRozan's old, and I don't think plays a particularly winning brand of basketball in 2026. I like Sabonis, but you have to surround him with a team that makes sense because he's so poor defensively. You have to surround him with competent defensive players and good shooters. They have no competent – their starting lineup, assuming it's Westbrook, LaVine, DeRozan, DeAndre Hunter, and Sabonis, is maybe the worst expensive and name value defensive team I've ever seen. That no one in that lineup plays a lick of defense. I think Sabonis is good, and I think he has a long career ahead of him. I hope for his sake he kind of gets traded out of here and maybe to a team that really understands his strengths and weaknesses better than Sacramento does. But their whole team building process doesn't make sense. And going back to the money thing, with this, they had Schroeder's deal, whatever. It was a bad contract. It was kind of fishy when they gave it to him. But, I mean, $15 million is $15 million. He's an NBA playable rotation player. You were always going to be able to move that contract to someone at some point. They completely bungled this Keon Ellis contract situation last year where they could have declined his team option last year, made him a restricted free agent, and re-signed him on a pretty affordable deal. And he's a winning piece who makes sense, and they still would have been able to trade, assuming you're playing him. And instead, they picked up his team option so he could be cheap for one more year, and he became an unrestricted free agent who was definitely going to leave hit free agency. So they kind of had to trade him. And they get no value when everyone who's kind of in the know suggests that there was teams who valued him and would have traded picks for him, or a pick for him. And I just think they mishandled this. And now you buy into not just this year, but next year of $20+ million for DeAndre Hunter when you're already overly expensive for a bunch of underwhelming defensive guys who in theory can score, but in reality aren't that good at it anymore. This just is them compounding every problem they have and making it worse to me.
Once again, it is Calif Poncy. It's Gerald Glassford right here for NBA Observations. Check out Calif's latest article today at the Swap Report. Again, I ripped in to Sacramento a little bit after the trade was done and I talked about it on Sunday. I just don't know if they have clue. And the thing is, you cannot blame Vlade Divac anymore.
It's ownership.
I understand he might be still an advisor or something like that, but no, you can't attach this to him, because I personally have a nice fondness for Vlade for what he once was with the Lakers. So I'll just
what he got you, more importantly, is what you should have a fondness for him.
Well, yes, he got us the player that's over my shoulder right now. But also the fact that I just loved watching him play when he's a young Laker. Yeah. But then he went to Sacramento and chain smoked his way into oblivion in Sacramento. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I honestly don't. They've got older players, they've got expensive players, and they've got bad players. And I'm just waiting for them to trade Maxime Renal, and boom, yeah, all their promise will finally be gone. So if that's what they're working on, Caleb, they're doing a good job, because if they're working on getting rid of anything promising, like a Keon Ellis, who a lot of teams, you and I have talked about, a lot of teams must have been eyeing him for some time. I know that, again, he's the apple of many a Lakers observer's eyes. Laker Tom wrote endlessly about him as far as it's concerned. And now, again, they don't have much in the way of young prospects either. This is just, I mean, the Wizards, at least you can see something, because they're going to clear a lot of cap space. They have no talent at all. They have absolutely no talent on the roster at all whatsoever. But at least you see a pathway to what they could do down the line. I don't know what's going on in Sacramento. I just honestly don't know again. And I don't know if a number 1 draft pick is going to even come close to fixing the problems now in Sacktown, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, starting with with Keon Ellis, like, the NBA and every sports league is a copycat league. What was OKC's superpower, and that's who teams are going to be looking at right now, obviously, kind of wanting to emulate what they're doing because they're so young and it's so They won the championship already, and it's so desirable to be in their position. Their superpower was they just had these guys between 6'2" and 6'5" who could go out there, and you had like 4 of them that could guard anybody, or they could at least play elite point of attack defense. And the Kings in the last, even going back to like DeMarcus Cousins, winning basketball players the Kings have had, the list is like just guys who you think no matter what, they, even in losing situations, they impact winning, which is a hard needle to thread, but that you usually can even point to some of these guys. Like in Washington, like Keyshawn George clearly profiles as a guy who in 5 or 6 years is going to be a tall 3-and-D wing who can score, and like he profiles as a guy who you can see in a winning basketball situation. I would argue you can say that about Keegan Murray maybe a few years ago before he gave him this huge contract. His player archetype makes sense in the modern NBA. Keon Ellis is this elite point of attack defender, capable shooter who, if you play him, he's going to grow. But they didn't, because what's a winning basketball player? What does a player who does winning things do in a team that loves to lose? And 3, I just don't remember before that. Like Halliburton obviously was there for a year and they messed that up. Fox, I think can be in a winning situation, and I think he's a good player, obviously, but I'm just talking more about role players. Like my point being very long-winded, they don't create winning basketball players in Sacramento. And so you have this guy, Keon Ellis, who they find, he's never been on another team. It was the rare, very good find for Sacramento, undrafted, I believe. And they just never play him. And when he does play, he looks good, but then they trade him and don't get anything of value in return. You get a negative asset in this DeAndre Hunter contract. So I don't know. I mean, that's just such a disaster in Sacramento. And for all Russell Westbrook's faults in his career, and I know Lakers fans, he's not the most popular guy there, but he has been able to kind of bring, maybe other than the Lakers, I would guess, he's been able to bring this kind of consistent level of like professionalism and like baseline, like the team tries when he's on the floor because he gives so much effort. And he even like Westbrook's running around being crazy, mostly creating negative plays at this point in his career. Like it no longer really leads to positive things, but he at least is out there giving a ton of effort, and that his like energy has not been infectious in Sacramento. Nobody cares. And so, yeah, I mean, this Kings thing, I don't think it's going to get any better because it comes from ownership. Their Vivek is just a disaster. There's certain teams in professional sports that they're just probably realistically not going to they're not going to turn a corner unless they get crazy lucky with their current owners. And the way I can see that happening for Sacramento is this kid at Kansas, Darren Peterson, if they were to get the number 1 pick, he's a special player, and I don't even think Sacramento could ruin him. Like that's how special of a guy I think this guy is, which I did not say lightly.
I would not put it out of the realm of possibility.
No, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. But I just think he is such a special offensive talent that just makes everything look so easy. And that's why I'm sure we'll maybe get into this a little bit later with some of these trades we think maybe should happen or we want to happen, is the teams that aren't going to make the playoffs really should be racing to the bottom. And this is a crazy draft. Like Peterson, I kind of, he's had this weird thing. He hasn't really played with Kansas for much. Like he's been in and out of the lineup with this hamstring thing. But when he's on the floor, like this is a guy who we haven't seen a guard like this in college in a really long time. He's that special of an offensive player. And then DeBanstead at BYU, another guy, 6'9", does all the hard things incredibly well at 18, 19. Boozer at Duke, maybe doesn't like have the crazy athleticism of those two, but he's just uber productive everywhere. And he comes from where that's high school, AAU, now in college at Duke. Like no matter where he's at, just crazy productive. And now I think he's probably 3rd in this class, most likely, but just because of how crazy good the top 2 are. But this is a crazy good class. And you say like you don't think a number 1 pick can save Sacramento. I think I agree, but if there's ever going to be a year where it was like, I don't know if DeMar DeRozan has any trade, but he actually, I without any sources, I can say confidently, I do not think DeMar DeRozan has any trade value at this stage in his career.
Maybe a second.
Yeah, but his contract is so big. I mean, he has a weird contract where it's non-guaranteed and you can get out of it after this year, I guess. But
that's true.
Like they should really be kind of trading some of these guys, and if they were a good, smart, well-run franchise, which they're not, but if they were, they would be moving and just trying to get. And then like fourth in this class is Caleb Wilson, who is also an awesome prospect. So
the top 5 is really, those 5 are like, I don't want to say Cooper Flag level, but they have the potential to be game changers when it
yes,
comes to what you can do to build a franchise around them.
yeah, true superstar prospects. Which usually in most classes you get one, maybe two, and there's in this class. I mean, even this, I don't know if he's a superstar level guy, but even this kid that's coming up at Illinois, like this, I think Wagler is his name, like he is come out of nowhere. Everyone knew his class was good because this top 3 of DeBansta and Peterson and Boozer has been heralded for years. But I mean, then Caleb Wilson's now coming on, and like Nate Ament was fourth, and he's fallen way down the board. But like now Caleb Wilson's came up, and this Wagler was out of nowhere, and he's come up. And this is a crazy good draft class that everyone should be trying to get in on. But, instead of getting that extra draft picks and maybe just some salaries you can shed, Sacramento decided to go get DeAndre Hunter for their contracts. And their probably most valuable trade asset outside of Sabonis, which was Keon Ellis. The rest of these guys are just on such big contracts that they're not really very valuable, and they really, really screwed it up, in my opinion, which is the opposite of shocking. This is just par for the course.
Once again, it is Calif Poncy. It's me, Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for watching some NBA observations. The other trade that's there, and again, I 100% agree. I think you and I could go in there and do a better job. And I don't say that half-heartedly or anything like that. I say it's because it's real. I could do a better job. You could do a better job running that franchise right now. I don't even think we could pick that bad in fantasy basketball.
No, right, it's now. Like they don't watch basketball sometimes. Like it's seriously, it's like 2K, and even their 2K team, like they're. I mean, I don't know. Like it's just all
even
these guys.
Even the randomizer in 2K doesn't do that bad.
Yeah, it's like it's all these guys who are solid offensive players in theory, but none of their games fit together. Like the only 2 I think, even theoretically, you could sell me on fitting together is Sabonis because he's such a strong passer out of the post and high post. And I still am not necessarily in because I just think he's pretty poor defensively. But in terms of like what he can be as a solid, really like a top 10 center in the league, I think I'm still in on Sabonis. And the only player they have on their team that I think really makes sense to me with him is Keegan Murray because he's just this kind of movement, relocating three-point shooter. And in theory, Levine's that, but Levine just wants the ball and has the ball too much, and he's been the same player for 10 years. Like, this is not news. He plays the same way he did in Chicago. And so, I don't know. We have already spent way too much time talking about the Kings. We should move on to these 2 teams who I do kind of see what they're doing.
Well, yes, the next trade that's out there that took place was between Atlanta and Portland. And you had Atlanta and Portland with Pete Krejci, 42% three-point shooter, heading to Portland for Duop Reith, who is out for the season with, I believe, foot surgery, and 2 second-round picks, one of which is Atlanta getting its own second pick back from a previous trade with Portland, plus a New York 2030 second rounder. So what are your thoughts on this one? Again, Pete Krejci, not the greatest defender in the world, but a sharp shooter, which a lot of teams covet and need. And a guy coming out of the rotation, coming off the bench that can fill it up from 3 is never a bad thing. I mean, look at Landry Shamet against the Lakers last night. Came off the bench. He was on fire. They rode him, and he did them proud as he was basically the reason why the Lakers lost in MSG.
Yeah, I mean, I think Krejci's an elite shooter on a great contract, and it's not that he's just kind of a spot-up guy. He makes hard threes whenever he'd be in the game. Like they sprint him around screens. He catches the ball. He can shoot kind of leaning on those three-pointers. He's a really good shooter, and Portland needs shooting. Still does even after adding him, and I think that if they didn't trade Reith, the likelihood is he was probably going to end up getting waived to create space for Caleb Love's roster spot, would be my guess.
Yeah, because Portland they're going to promote 2 of their two-way guys, including the rookie, one of the rookie of the year candidates, Caleb Love. And I'm not kidding when I say that, outside of course what we see with Flag and Knipple, because Caleb Love has been lighting it up. We talked about it last week, but yeah, he and Sissoko, I believe, were going to be moved up into regular contracts. And Yeah, Portland, obviously, it's a good sign for them when you can do that, when you have two-way players you can promote that are really making a contribution for you. And after Denny Advia getting named to the All-Star team, it just shows that they have some semblance of promise in Portland going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've done all this. I mean, they're really struggling as of late in terms of results. But Avdia's been in and out of the lineup. He hurt his back and finger, I think, and he's been kind of dealing with some stuff in and out of the lineup. And they've really been dealing with injuries all year. Drew Holiday's been in and out. Scoot Henderson still hasn't even played this season. They're just. I think they know what they are. They're a defense first team, and they have a high usage offensive star here with Denny Avdia that they kind of, I don't want to say stumbled into, but I don't think anybody thought Denny Avdia was going to be near this good when they traded for him, or when obviously Washington did. But he's an awesome offensive player, very deserving All-Star in my opinion. And this just, but you looked around that team and it was Shaedon Sharp's inconsistent from three. Drew Holiday is aging, and he's a good open three-point shooter, but he's not going to be a guy who comes in and throws up a bunch of threes for you. That's not really what his game has ever been. It is not really that now. Avdia really likes to get into the paint. He's really good at getting to the line. They just needed they needed volume. And that I kind of wrote about that in my article last week, where some problem, which is shocking in this era where there's been more threes shot this season than there ever has before in NBA, or there's on pace to be more threes this season than there ever has before. But some of the elite teams, which Portland obviously isn't, like OKC and Houston, they just struggle with 3-point volume. Like they don't shoot enough threes. And Portland kind of was right there in that mix where they just don't have, like Kamara's they had a bunch of solid shooters. Kind of reminds me of OKC, where it's like Dort's a solid shooter, but if he goes 0 for 9, no one struck. That's kind of what I think a lot of the guys on Portland were. And Krejci's poor defensively. He's had some injury issues. He came into the league with a knee injury that kind of held him out his first year, and he's been in and out of the lineup really ever since. But he was a good find for Atlanta after kind of being just thrown out of the scrap heap by the Thunder. And they signed him to a really good contract for any guy who can play in a rotation, and I think he can. And elite shooting is just that you can never have enough elite shooters, even if maybe you get to the playoffs and they can't play a lot because of how bad they are defensively. You still want to have those guys you can maybe throw out in the play-in game, and maybe Vit Krejci gets hot and makes 4 threes in the play-in game for the Blazers, and it swings a game. Like you just want to have guys like that on your roster, and I think this was just an awesome move, especially being that I think he's still under contract next year at this really cheap number. And you give up a guy, like we've said, they were probably going to waive just to create a roster spot. And I really think Portland's done a really good job. When Cronin kind of took over, there was not an interview process. He just was kind of given that job by Jody Allen. And after Neil Olshey kind of went out unceremoniously there. And the start was weird. Like the draft picks didn't necessarily all look like they were great or working out, with Scoot at 3 and Shaedon Sharp is a talented scorer, but we don't know. And, some other guys, but now Klingon is awesome for what he is. They find Caleb Love undrafted. They get Tumani Kamara just kind of thrown into the Yusuf Nurkic dump trade, and Tumani Kamara is a very valuable role player now. City Sissoko is a great find, is just a guy who, is he ever going to be key in their rotation when they're healthy? Probably not, but he's awesome to have on the end of the bench. He just comes in and tries. And I thought Reith was honestly a halfway solid. Like the fact that he was able to play was pretty positive for them. But now that you turn him into a guy who's definitely going to be able to play on a lot of NBA teams, he's pretty high field too. I watched him a little bit in OKC, and like the shooting wasn't there like this yet, but he clearly kind of was this big guard who had a decent handle, and he had good feel for the game. And he made sense to me as just kind of a guy who would stick around because of how smart he was. And then he developed this awesome shooting touch. So, yeah, I think this is an A+ for Portland on the margins. Like, they obviously aren't getting Giannis or anything, we don't think, but like this is a move that they're just doing. Their front office has done really good adding around the edges. And if Avdia is your superstar, I don't necessarily think you're going to be able to compete for playoff rounds or anything, but if they would be able to add another star along with him somehow, whether that's trade or draft, or maybe Shaedon Sharp turns into that, or whoever. I think this is a team in a really good spot, and they continue to add really good role players.
I agree with you. They are looking like they have a brighter future, even though their present isn't the greatest right now. Like you said, they're on a 5-game losing streak, but I do see them adding pieces that might help for them down the road. It's just if someone can develop alongside Danny Advia to the point where they can really have a 1-2 punch that really can get them going into a higher level right now than where they're at in the Western Conference. But we'll wait and see what happens. But yeah, there you go. There's the huge number of trades, man. I'm out of breath, man. I'm just really so tired from talking about all those trades. Oh, it's only two. But we were able to stretch it out for 30 minutes, so that ain't half bad right there. But it is, of course, NBA observation. So with the trades that have not come in, what about the trades yet to come? I want to hear your thoughts, and because we're trying to approach this in a different fashion from the way we talked to him. We kind of held out on our trade talks last week. So who do you see? Because we know the Giannis sweepstakes is going on right now, and obviously that's going to be of great interest to everyone to see if something finally pulled out there. But who do you see as buyers, major buyers, and major sellers come to trade deadline?
Well, I mean, we'll just get Milwaukee out of the way. I think they're a team that could go either way. Like if they made a trade to kind of still try and extend this life cycle a little bit more, I wouldn't be shocked. And if they traded Giannis tomorrow, I wouldn't be shocked. So I think they're either going to be a dramatic buyer or a dramatic seller. They'll do a shocking move either way. I think they're pretty open. I'd say Dallas is probably going to sell, I'd think. They just clearly are in a space where Flag is amazing and even better than anyone thought he was going to be already. And they kind of have these older guys. They have a kind of a logjam at center, and they're going to have a lottery pick this year. So maybe one of their Gafford and who's their other center? It's Gafford and Lively, and they have one more, I think. Anthony Davis, I don't think is healthy enough to get traded, but I think Gafford, maybe Najee Marshall, guys like that. I would think that Dallas is going to be in the market to sell. Let's see, who else are we thinking here? I mean, I think it's just been really quiet, and we don't really know. Like Brian Windhorst reported OKC is going to sniff around adding a depth center. I don't know if that's true. Like when OKC does stuff, you don't really hear about it. It's not really how they operate. The Clippers, I think, would be an interesting one. Like they clearly need to buy, and they have contracts to go get someone, but I don't know who that would be. I don't know. I think there's a lot of teams in weird places right now. I mean, we'll see with Brooklyn. They have like Michael Porter Jr., but that's just been radio silent for like a month. It kind of seems like they have a price that people aren't really willing to pay, or they just don't want to trade him. And then like New Orleans should definitely sell. They have valuable guys. They have Trey Murphy. They have Sadiq Bey. They have, some others too. Like I think they could probably fetch some value for, but they're New Orleans, so they won't. They'll just hold on to them and have the worst record without a draft pick and just be terrible as they continue to be for the last 10 years. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like you think that the Lakers are always going to sniff around, but you also seems like Pelinka maybe is going to just chill till this offseason. And I mean, I don't know.
They just don't have an abundance of assets to even make big noise. I mean, maybe something around the fringes, but they just they don't have anything that they can't land themselves in the Giannis sweepstakes if the Giannis sweepstakes ends. You look at the fine print of the contest and it ends on Thursday. So the Lakers will feel like left out because they just don't have enough assets. But yeah, maybe something along the fringes, but nothing that's going to move the needle very far.
Yeah, and I mean, I just kind of think that's where we're at in general. Like, I think it's 7 teams have like 50% of the tradable firsts over the next 5 years or whatever. Like, it's just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think it makes sense this is going to be a boring trade deadline. Now the NBA is stringing us along with these big names like John Morant. I don't think he's going to get traded. Anthony Davis, I don't think he's going to get traded. Giannis, every passing day, it seems a little more likely that he may get traded before the deadline. But still, like if I was on death row, I'd say he's going to be in with the Bucks past the deadline and get traded this summer. So I mean, there's just not a ton of teams who are in great. Like either teams are like, you've seen this notion with like OKC and the Knicks and the Spurs and the Rockets where they kind of quietly leak, like, we're happy with what we have. We don't want to do anything. We're not in the Giannis sweepstakes. We like our team. That's what Windhorst said about the Knicks with Giannis. I think this morning or yesterday, one of the two. So it's just a lot of the teams who you'd like historically, maybe before these aprons would have been big buyers. They're just not going to do it right now with how the aprons are structured. And For my expertise, which is OKC, I would be shocked if Ousmane Dieng doesn't get traded, just because OKC has a long history of trading guys before they hit restricted free agency. They either get an extension done or trade them. It's just what they've done over and over again. Going back to like James Harden, that was kind of his deal. So I just don't know. Like, if anyone wants to dive more into Ousmane Dieng's trade value, they can shoot me a DM. But I don't feel like anyone's probably particularly interested.
Three firsts.
Yeah, 3 firsts. 3 fake firsts, but 3 firsts.
Okay.
Yeah, but so no, I don't know. I think it's just shaping up to be a really boring deadline, and they really haven't been great the last couple of years. The NBA's just had this ability. Like last year, I don't feel like a ton of moves happened, but the ones that did, it was Luka, Jimmy Butler, and Fox. Like, it was huge names, and then obviously KD to Brooklyn happened, or to Phoenix, happened at the deadline. I think 2 or 3 years ago. Like, there's been these huge names that have been traded, but it's not like there's been some high volume of offers or trades. So I think we're probably going to see, it's only going to get worse as we get deeper and deeper into this apron era. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. You just looking at historically who'd be desperate. It'd be like Orlando. They're all in and they kind of aren't very good. You'd think Orlando would be trying to make a move, but they don't have any of their picks. OKC is just very patient by nature, even though if maybe a lot of places they'd be sweating after this recent stretch up until last night, and the shooting's been bad all year. I don't expect OKC to do anything crazy. The Lakers would be smart to wait because there's a very good chance that just because they're the Lakers, Giannis wants to go play with Luka and he could go to the Lakers this summer if then you have more tradable picks. Like, there's just is not teams who I think are going to do a ton. Like, I'd be shocked if Miami doesn't do a move. I don't think that necessarily means it's Giannis, but that could be trading Wiggins or trading Simone Fontecchio or whoever. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's shaping up to be a pretty boring deadline, to be totally honest.
I think there are some interesting teams, however. Chicago tops my list of interesting teams because they have not 1, not 2, not 3, even more than Lakers on expiring contracts. They have 8 expiring contracts. As far as, okay, you just let them all go walk off into the sunset, or do you try to get something back for those players? We'll have to wait and see. But very interesting pieces that could be rotational pieces on other teams. Ayo Dosunmu's, Kobe White's the world. Kevin Huerter, who's struggling, but maybe getting a new lease on life. He could find his stroke back. I know that there are other players that could be involved as well from Chicago. So I expect Chicago, in the land of mediocrity, should hopefully find their way out, and maybe they'll take a step towards that during this week. I think they're probably the number 1 on my list as far as potential teams with items to trade or assets that they were trade that they may be interested in trading. And then you have the same usual suspects, Brooklyn, Washington, as salary dump places, or maybe take some of their bit players and move them as well. Cleveland, I don't think is finished yet as well. I think Cleveland has one more move to free up more cap space for them, and we'll see exactly what they would get in return. But I think Cleveland has also one more move to make as well.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago is not as bad as Sacramento, but they're just kind of in that same headspace for me where I just don't really expect them to do what makes sense. I just kind of in theory, there's reports like they're not getting what they want for Kobe White or Ayo Dosunmu, and it's like, well, that's because of the value of Kobe White, where he's been coveted by other teams for the last 3 years as this like valuable piece who fits in. Is he was on this awesome contract for the next 3 years, making like they think $13 million. Instead of trading him, they sit on it, and now he's on an expiring contract. You're gonna have to pay him $20+ million a year. He's not as valuable anymore.
Yeah.
Dosunmu is just a really winning basketball player who makes a lot of sense on any team. I think every team from the Lakers to the Clippers to OKC to San Antonio, like everybody should be trying to get in on him. He's a pretty solid outside shooter, and he's an elite defensive player. But he's from Chicago. I think he went to Illinois. Like, their fans love him, and that's probably like, again, if they were smart, then that wouldn't matter. But they're not. Like, they're going to be like, well, does he sell jerseys? Whatever. Like, that's how they're going to look at it. And with the state of the Chicago Bulls, Ayo Dosunmu, their backup point guard, is probably like second on their team in jersey sales after Buzelis, I imagine. Like, they just their owner refuses to pay the tax despite being in Chicago. clearly money's a concern there. And I don't know. I don't expect anything from the Bulls. So I agree with you in principle. You would think the Bulls would be able to get like a first for Kobe White, but we'll see. Maybe his value has swung so much. He's been hurt and he's on an expiring. I think he makes a lot of sense for someone like Houston. I think he would be a really good fit there if they could get past his maybe lackluster defensive ability, but we'll see. That trade would make sense. Like I said, Dosunmu, I think 29 teams should be calling just to try and get someone like that in the door and extend him. I think he's that type of – I think he just makes a lot of sense as a bench player everywhere or a fifth starter, whatever you want to do with him. And yeah, I mean, Cleveland, because of my unfortunate Browns fandom, I really see a lot of what goes on with Cleveland and their fans, what their fans are thinking, what their reporters are thinking. And Giannis just keeps trickling around. Like maybe they do it. They haven't like said no, they're sniffing around something. It feels like LeBron might go back there after this year to me. I don't think with the way LeBron works, I don't think he's just going to be like, well, guys, I didn't do a retirement tour, but I'm retiring. Like, I feel like he's going to want the retirement tour. And I think it's pretty clear that every day there's another report. I don't think him and the Lakers are long for each other. I think they're probably ready to move on both sides, but you know, that he makes too much and he's too hard of a player to integrate to really trade midseason.
It's got that no trade thing that, you know, he can also go ahead and throw out at people.
So he'd pick where he went, you know, of course, but I don't think it makes sense I think he'll just sign there for the MLE, whatever. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Cleveland. I'm sure they moved last year. They're a front office that's shown they're willing to be aggressive and kind of trying to make their team better. We'll see. You'd think Boston would do something, either buy to get better because they think Tatum's coming back, or sell to get under the tax because they know he's not coming back. You'd think they'd probably pick a direction there. I'd like Toronto to maybe try and buy on a point guard. I just am not the biggest Emmanuel Quickley guy in terms of being like your franchise's starting point guard, as much as I think he's an explosive scorer. So there's teams that I wish would do stuff. I don't know that the names are there. There doesn't seem to be a ton of interest in trading. And these aprons, while the intentions of them were, of course, positive, they just have really, I think, backfired in about every conceivable way. They punish teams like Boston and OKC, who I think really should be rewarded for drafting a lot of their really good players. And they also really limits in-season trading outside of extremes. So, yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I wake up tomorrow and Giannis is on the Heat or whatever. It's just way more fun if that's the universe we live in. But I don't know. I mean, I do think the Bulls make sense as a seller. I think Kobe White Houston screams to me as the team that makes sense. They need 3-point shooting volume. He's affordable for 1 year. They could just basically, I think, trade DFS basically straight up for him. And not only are they getting a player who I think is just going to be more useful to them this year, they just have a lot of players in that Finney-Smith role. They're also getting off kind of like I think they gave Finney-Smith like 5 years. So they'd also be getting off a contract. And the Bulls are probably dumb enough to just take it and not really think two things about it and just take the 5 years of Dorian Finney-Smith at $15 million or whatever. So we'll see. I think Kobe White could be traded. That makes a lot of sense to me, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I hope more entertaining days are to come than me looking at my phone and seeing Vit Krejci for Duop Reith. We just talked about how much I like Vit Krejci for Portland, but it's not really the deadline I grew up with in terms of looking now.
No, not at all. But those are some of the thoughts from both Calif and myself on who the movers and shakers might be before the trade deadline. If you have thoughts, please let us know below, right here for some NBA observations. But before we head on out, had an interesting discussion on one of the post games last week. And actually, I want to hear your thoughts on this because I watch a lot of shows and I gather a lot of information from observers, reporters from all around the league. And I stated that there is a possibility, there is a world that by the end of this year, Cade Cunningham could finish higher on the MVP poll, the MVP voting, than Luka Doncic. And I got laughed at, literally got laughed at by both John Costa and Joe Soro. I mean, obviously, they see everything from a Lakers-centric standpoint, whatnot. But I said, if you look at this from an NBA standpoint, who is running the team, a sixth-place team right now, and who is running a first-place team right now? So that being said, my friend, you have seen what's gone on in the league so far. Again, I've heard inferences and a lot of people leaning towards Cade Cunningham, and you know about when they vote on these things as far as the MVP concerned, it's about the narrative. What is the narrative for this season for this particular player? Last year, the narrative was for SGA because of how good OKC they'd taken that next step. This year, dominating for a great portion of the season, although your article says otherwise as of late. But still, without a doubt, especially because of the injury to Jokic and the fact when they faced up against each other this past weekend, SGA dominated. I think at this point, you're probably saying SGA is a clear leader. Jokic, because he's still eligible, would be in second place. But I said you might have to look there. You might have to look at Jaylen Brown. You might have to look at other alternatives. But Cade Cunningham, that narrative is getting stronger and stronger as long as Detroit is getting better and better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think your narrative thing is a really strong point. What's the Luka narrative?
He leads the league in scoring.
Yeah, that's it, right? And he's, I would argue, maybe never been worse defensively than he has been this season. The effort on that end is really just not quite there. The Lakers are the 6th seed, and because of him, they're honestly have a way better record than they probably should. He's just that special to close games, as Reeves and LeBron. All of them are so great at the end of games, but I just don't. I agree with you. The NBA or the MVP is absolutely a narrative-based award. The narrative for Detroit is easy. It's this: they're risen from the ashes, and it's all offensively. It's all on this guy. There's no one else, and we'll see. They're a team that I somehow they slipped. I think both of our mind, but I would love if they made an aggressive move to go get another kind of on-ball creator at the deadline if they could. But
yes,
Cade does everything offensively for that team. He holds up defensively. They're going to be right with OKC for the best record in the league. He's he's fun. He's honestly at this point in the MVP race, probably going to come down to mattering that he's leading the charge of this American generation right now. Like it's so foreign dominated, and that's fine. Like I think the 5 best players in the league are all from overseas right now, or over borders, I should say, in the case of SGA. But I think that him and like he's really leading this young generation of American players, and he's amazing, and he's a great offensive player. And maybe the efficiency isn't always there, but I think you could say the same for Luka. And the Pistons are going to be the 1 seed when no one thought that was going to happen. They lost multiple important players to their team last year, and just have shrugged it off like it didn't matter that their best 3-point shooter was in an FBI probe about gambling, and they lost him and had to replace him with Duncan Robinson, who was in and out of the rotation for the Heat for 2 years. So yeah, I mean, I think if I had to do a ballot right now, if I was voting, I think SGA is a clear one. I thought that before last night's game, and then for the moment being, like for him to just go out there, and that was really one of his more masterful games, like his control of the passing and just effortlessly scoring and blowing him out in Denver. I think that gave him a real momentary stranglehold on that narrative. I do still think Jokic is too. He's just every year we don't think he can be better in terms of his advanced stats and things like that. He finds a way to improve on them. But 3's where it gets interesting. And for me, like, I come from that OKC background. Maybe that sours me on Luka a little bit, but I just think Cade should be 3. I'm in your corner where Luka does lead the league in scoring. Luka's better points, rebound, assist wise, but Cade's a better defensive player. Cade's team is a lot better record wise. They're going to continue to be. And I just think Cade's team is a way better basketball team, even though they do play in the East. And so that I think I'd have Luka 4, and then I'd have Jaylen Brown 5 probably, or maybe Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey. I think you could give or take either one of those guys. But I mean, I agree with you. I think this is a 2-man race. It kind of seems like it may be that way until Wemby enters the fold, maybe next year or the year after, whenever he's able to finally, get healthy enough to play 65 games in a season. But Cade's season should be commended. He should be a lock for all NBA first team. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I'm not alone in thinking that, or maybe my bias against Luka, whatever, which I don't think I really have in terms of how I view him, but he's not my favorite player. I'm glad that I'm not feeling like I'm taking crazy pills on that one, because I completely agree with you. I just think Cade's how much of a winning player he's been. It should be taken note of, and he should be third in that list to me. I agree.
And I'm just saying that I would choose Luka at third. I just want to say for the record, I would choose Luka at third. But what I'm hearing, and again, those two didn't want to listen to what I had to say. They just wanted to sit there and laugh. They don't get it. They don't. You have to observe. This is NBA observations here. You have to observe from around the league. And from what I'm hearing, there is a great possibility that Luka will not be third. Put Jaylen Brown possibly in that mix. Again, you mentioned Wembanyama. Could Wembanyama lead a charge for a team that's second place in the West? There are players having statistically not as great a seasons as Luka, but their narrative is better. And that's why I'm saying right now, the best narrative outside of what we're seeing with SGA and Jokic is in Detroit. It's not with the Lakers. But I'm saying if I'm voting for Luka third, I'm just saying I would probably be very worried about that vote going through as far as with everybody else, because I think if you look at it from outside the LA spectrum and a Lakers fan spectrum, that case and that narrative for Detroit and Cade Cunningham becomes stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and I mean, another Laker, LeBron, has dealt with his whole career. Like, these are just kind of the perils of, like, Luka averaging whatever he is. What's he at? 34, 9, and 9, I think. Like, a player averaging that is insane and does not happen very often. But we've come to the point with Luka where it's now expected, and so that takes away from a whole lot of narrative things. I mean, LeBron, what's he have? 4 MVPs. LeBron should have like 9 MVP awards if it was just like who was the best player this season, whatever. I don't think Luka's been the best player. I'm not saying that, but I just think that once you just do the same thing every year and your team isn't reaching, like the difference with SGA and Jokic, where this is expected from them, is their teams are having these great successes, right? Or in terms of, or in case of Jokic, it's like Luka, we haven't seen a player exactly like Luka, but we've seen these super high volume, really, really like explosive scorers before, but not exactly like him again, but just this archetype of players existed. There has never been, and there probably will never be, another Jokic. Like, they just don't make them like this. And he somehow is better every year and keeps coming back and being a little bit better. And so that's kind of why I think him and SGA's team is so dominant, and his efficiency is so unique. And now talk about narratives, like he's on the precipice of breaking this Wilt record for 20-point games. Like there's narrative stuff for SGA to benefit from. And Luka's great. He's an insanely awesome offensive player. Probably the second best pure just points, rebounds, assists, statistical offensive player in the league after Jokic. But it's what we expect of him. And he's also just like, when players like this, because this happened with Jokic last year, where there was an article, like the people who wanted Jokic to win MVP, there was like an article that got published at the end of the year where it's like, Jokic actually isn't a bad defender. He gets a lot of kicked balls, and that's a huge deal. It's like, no, it's like with Steph Curry. These guys can be all-time great players and not great defensive players. But like they're going to find, and there was always like, well, Steph actually holds up better than you'd think. There's none of that with Luka, because defensively, he doesn't even look like he tries half the time. Like, it's just kind of what his deal is. That's who he's been as a player. That was, I mean, why Nico Harrison foolishly was like, he could never win a championship, even though he's in the finals the year before. I'm not saying this holds him back from being an all-time great player, because I don't think it does. But when you're fighting against these other two, I mean, Jokic definitely, I think SGA's on the way. These are going to be like top 20 players that have ever played. Like, you're going against these guys. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Luka's he's going to have a really hard time winning an MVP, because it's just the era that he's playing in. I think right now it's constructed that SGA's team success is just always going to be a little bit better than his is in the regular season. Jokic is this perfect basketball player, really. And then Wemby's coming, and we all know. And as soon as he has a lick of MVP, that narrative's going to shoot him up like a rocket. Like it's just this expected arrival of all-time greatness. So I think Luka's going to retire as one of the 20 to 30 best players of all time, and he may just never win an MVP just because of the era that he's in, which is crazy to say, because I think, again, like that's how highly I do think of him in terms of his all-time standing, but he's just in an unfortunate era.
We will see what happens, my friend, but I just wanted to get a clarification on that. So I'm not totally crazy when I say things like that. So I wanted to get some feedback on it. But again, these are things that I'm observing. These are things that I'm hearing as far as a possibility. Um, well, again, if that's the case, I still think that Luka has every chance and opportunity to be third in the running at MVP, and it's a free for all. But again, it's not often about who is the best player, because I'm not putting Cade Cunningham on my top 5 players in the league right now. No, I'm not. But who has the best narrative over the course of the season? And fortunately, that's what the voters vote on and that's how they usually vote, is what's the best storyline for them, and not necessarily based on who is the best player. And I'll just leave it at that, Calif.
Yeah, I agree. The Cade and the narratives don't need to be complex. They're easy. Like the year Westbrook won MVP, it was an easy narrative. Last year when SGA won, he had been punching at the door, and then it was an easy narrative. When Embiid, I think the most weird one that we've had recently has been the Embiid versus Jokic one that just got pretty nasty on both sides. But this Cade thing is easy, and the reality situation also is the voters are going to get to third because it's a 2-man race most likely, and we'll see. I mean, Jokic can still, like, if Jokic sprains an ankle, he might not be eligible. Like, that's very possible, but they're going to get to third, and they're going to want to reward like team success and maybe a breakout guy and things like that over, again, the guy they've seen. Like, Luka's done this year after year after year because of how consistent and dominant an offensive player he is. Meanwhile, Cade, he was good last year. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head if he made an All-NBA team, but I mean, he had clearly ascended to like an all-star, but now he's up, and I agree, he's not a top 5 player really. I think that top 6 is pretty unassailable right now, of like Jokic, Shea, Giannis, Luka, Ant Edwards, and Wemby. I just think those are the 6 best players right now, and I think pretty much everyone would agree, unless maybe some would want to have Steph over Ant. But I think in my opinion, those are pretty easily the 6 best players. But I think the Cade thing starts like 8. Like, he's an awesome player who's on this hyper efficient team. That's the story. Really, if this OKC thing wasn't going on, where they for the first 30 games of the season looked like they could break the all-time wins record, they had been the story of the season of the NBA all season. So, we'll see what happens. Lucas has a huge name, and he's so individually dominant. He's still proud. I think if I had to bet on it, I'd still think he'd get third, but it could be Cade, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. I agree.
Well, there you go. But before we head on out, before we get to what Calif is working on and what he just put out there on the Suave Report, finally got some news, my friend. The Clippers, who are playing the 76ers right now and just started the third quarter as we talk about this, notable name that's absent from the starting lineup tonight is one James Harden. So if you look on Twitter, Shams Charania just posted the Los Angeles Clippers and 11-time All-Star James Harden are working through whether the sides can find a deal by Thursday's NBA trade deadline. Why don't you just say he asked for a trade? Why don't you just say Giannis asked for a trade? Why don't you just say James Harden has asked for a trade? Why don't you just say?
I don't get this. Why? They're playing well. Why are they? Harden, I love him. I think he's going to be an underrated all-time player, but what's the point? Where is he going to go? He's someone, but like the team that I would love for him would be Toronto. He'd be awesome on the Raptors, but I don't think he's going to want to go to the Raptors.
The irony, if he went to Toronto, where Kawhi just came from, I would find a little bit of irony in that. You have to excuse me on that, but he has 2 years left, $40 million roughly. Thereabouts right now.
Yeah, Houston. But again, like, how's Houston going to come up with that money?
But the Clippers have played better than anyone.
They've been start of the year, for a month and a half.
Yeah, I don't get it. There must be something. Could be issues between him and Ty Lue, or Kawhi and him, aspiration and him. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Exactly. Maybe he didn't get his check or his house, or his lavish apartment or whatever, the condo or whatever that was bought, possibly. If you watch Pablo Torres Find Out, as far as I'm concerned, maybe he didn't plant a tree either. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But
that's a weird
so
one.
do you have anywhere just off the top of your head he may go? Because Toronto, you mentioned this one.
I love the basketball fit with Toronto. They need a stabilizing force who can get guys involved and be consistent at the point. I'd love that for Toronto. I think in this East, that would make them like an East Finals contender. Personally, that's how much I like that. If Orlando can make it happen, they just don't have the money. I don't think it makes any sense. I can't even think in my head how that would happen, but I love him in Orlando. Houston, they could have brought him back a few years ago, and I think Ime Udoka was pretty cool on the idea. Like he didn't necessarily love.
You'd have to trade him for Suggs, is what you could do him for.
I think I'd do it
because Suggs is always injured, but he's on the books for 5 years.
He's always injured. I think if you're Orlando again, like we all know his deal in the playoffs. He's not a great playoff performer. He's gonna wilt, and that's why it really complicates anywhere with him, because you'd think he's one of these guys who, if he gets traded somewhere, it's going to be to maybe take him up a level or take that team up a level and maybe make them a contender or conference contender or whatever, like I just said with Toronto. But no, I don't know what the team is. You'd think with something like this, he'd have a team picked out almost. Like you'd think behind there'd be enough back channeling where he'd know where he was going to go. But in my head, I don't know where that would be, unless I'm just completely blanking on someone.
So right now, if you did a Jalen Suggs and Jet Howard deal for James Harden and Cam Christie, based on the numbers, you could do it.
I think I'd do it if I was Orlando. What they have clearly isn't working. They need an offensive push. They need an offensive organizer. They need someone to shoot. And Suggs, I get, is critical to their identity and who they want to. This is what I ran into writing that article that we'll talk about here in a second with OKC is. In it, my whole proposal is OKC should trade for Trey Murphy because they can make it work tax-wise, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But to do it, it's going to be like they'd have to trade Dort or Caruso, and those guys just feel so integral to like what OKC does.
But is Dort on his way out? That's the question I would ask to you.
Well, he signed with Clutch just before we got on, which is never a positive thing if someone on your team signs with Clutch, because they either are going to request a trade if they're a star, or B, they're going to get their money. Clutch guys get their money over and over again. So I don't think so. I think he's so important to what they want to do. But we'll see. Obviously, that signals there had been a thought like, oh well. He's been so emotional. Like he wrote a letter to the fans before the finals. He cried after the bubble. Like he's been so emotionally attached to OKC, which is part of why OKC fans are so latched to him. There has been a thought, and he's best friends with Shea, and they're both Canadian, and they're on the national team. Like there had been some thought where it's like, well, maybe Dort will take not a big cut, but a little bit to stay with this team. And someone signing with Clutch tells me that there's not going to be a pay cut coming. So that is somewhat of an unfortunate thing for OKC today. But yeah, going back, like I think my point was going to be like sometimes like the identity's great and whatever, and for OKC this is way more true than with Orlando because they're coming off the title and they're so young. But the identity sometimes has a bit of a ceiling. Like last night with OKC with Denver, like Cason Wallace went crazy and made 7 threes, and you could I had someone tell me like, oh well, does that change your opinion? Like does that mean like they have the shooters there? And I was like, no, that means.
That's one game.
That's one game, and that proves to me, if anything, that because another thing I go into there is the on-off numbers for his whole career with OKC with SGA and shooters are crazy. Like it's OKC's just never had good shooters, but whenever they are, their offensive rating is amazing, and their defensive rating is still good because of how deep they are defensively. And if anything, that move makes me think they should trade for a shooter more. Like if you give SGA shooting, it opens up the floor for him in a way that, like, if people have to respect Cason Wallace, imagine what they'd have to do to Trey Murphy. Like
when you talked about Cason Wallace and he scored 27, he only scored 26 in the last 3 games. So that tells you the type of consistency you've been seeing so far this year from Cason Wallace.
He struggled this year, which is unfortunate. I think I like Cason Wallace. I think he's going to be a good NBA player for a long time, but the shooting hasn't been where you want to. But anyway, we're getting away from James Harden. My point, I just think that if you're Orlando, like this identity you have that you act like is really important and crucial, like it isn't really working. And I don't think that's on Suggs. Like when Suggs plays, they're pretty good, really, but Suggs doesn't really play. And your defensive infrastructure, you're probably not going to be as great defensively, but they're going to be still a passable defensive team. Like Paulo, Franz, Bane all hold up defensively well enough. And the only thing that gives me pause is that I don't know if this is a Suggs or I think this might just be a Paulo Franz issue that they might need to tackle. And that it's not time for that yet. They have to see what they have. But I think it makes a ton of sense for Orlando, to be honest. And I don't think that's what it's going to be. That just doesn't. They feel too young to make this big of a change, especially for a guy as old as Harden. But that's such a weird move. And you'd think with a guy like that, he'd have a place or two maybe that his agent had already figured out, like they're going to trade for you and they're going to extend you or whatever the reason he's asking for a trade is. I don't know.
I've got actually a couple more choices for you. Just want to run by you. Cleveland for Darius Garland.
No, I like Garland too much.
Even though, where is he now?
He's hurt, and he's hurt a lot, but his injuries are just, I don't know. They're the same. I know they're the same. I've just always had a soft spot for Garland.
But Suggs is 5 years, and Garland's 3 years. But still, I mean, when you're talking already about a young player that they're already having to find a way to modify his shoe. I heard this earlier today, talking about modifying his shoe and putting a plate in and all. That's not good, Caleb.
No.
That's maybe for a 35-year-old player, not a 25-year-old player.
Yeah, I mean his toes have been giving him trouble for 2 years now, really. But yeah, I mean it makes sense. My biggest problem with it really is Harden and Donovan Mitchell together. I just don't.
Okay.
I just don't like it. I think they both need the ball too much.
Okay, I'm just asking. Thought I'd run it by because the numbers almost dollar for dollar match up.
He's going to get traded somewhere. I mean, it
matches up. And it matches up to where actually Cleveland could do it because it's Garland's about $300,000 more expensive, which would actually save them money and an extra year, which would save them tens of millions of dollars in taxes. And I'll just leave it at that. But the last one is kind of, you take for what it's worth because he is and I guess beyond his prime backcourt player, a little bit selfish in nature, needs the ball a lot, has a tendency to shoot a lot. He'd be a perfect fit in Sacramento, wouldn't he?
Can you imagine he asks for a trade out of this good Clippers situation that seems like it's going in a positive direction, and he says, I want to go to Sacramento.
No, or David, if I was Lawrence Frank, I would say, sure, you want to trade? Have fun in Sacktown, baby.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely if it's like that where they're like, you know what, James Harden, F you, you've been the prima donna this whole time. We're trading you where we want to trade you. I'd make a call to Sacramento.
Yeah, I mean, they're not obligated to. Yeah,
but the phrasing was already they're working together, which means they're not working together. James Harden's gonna go where James Harden wants to go.
Okay,
you always have to mention Miami for these things. They always have to be in there. I don't know what the point of that would be. Like, I don't think, I mean, it would basically
Norm Powell's doing amazing. Why would you want to mess with that?
It would also, I think, just have to be like hero for Harden or that basic.
Well, no, because they've got the with the salary because of the gambling issue.
Oh, that's yeah.
It just got cleared up today as we were talking about it earlier today. Terry Rozier, that's 26. That would take care of. So it'd be something like Terry Rozier's $26 million. Maybe you add on Davion Mitchell and then a third player on it. Drew Smith.
I mean, I bet would just Wiggins and Rozier work?
Wiggins and Rozier, yeah, that would take you over. So you'd have to add a piece in for the Clippers, but yeah, you could find something to work that out. Yeah, that would take you to about $54 million. So you need Bogdanovich. And Bogey is injured right now, and he hasn't done well this year at all. So, did he play with Miami before? Am I mistaken on that? No, I don't think he's just Atlanta. So yeah. No, yeah. So it would be Harden, Bogdanovich versus for Wiggins and Rozier. I just don't really know who that's helping out.
I agree. I don't know what the point is. I just wanted to mention Miami because James Harden just feels like Miami. And then
I mean, it would help the Clippers because that $26 million of Rozier is coming off the books. But yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I would be shocked if we don't have a destination figured out in the next 12 hours, kind of where he maybe is circling where he wants to go. But I don't know. He's a weird one. I mean, I feel like if there's any star like him who's going to maybe go to somewhere off the wall, it would be him. Just because I don't know what the. I mean, we'll figure this out. Again, I assume within 12 hours. But like, I don't know what the spot would, what the reason would be, other than something with his contract. Like he wants another deal, and they're not going to give it to him. Like I don't know. What else it would be like? Does he not like his basketball fit? I don't like why. Like I don't. His basketball fit's fine. He's been great this year, relative. I mean, he's 37. So I don't know. I mean, Orlando makes a lot of sense to me. I would also get if Orlando didn't want to give up Suggs because he's so much younger, but Suggs gets hurt a lot, and I don't think it would be a terrible thing for them to just get off that deal. If he's just never going to be able to be healthy, which seems like.
Well, I do want to mention one thing. He has to get off of his trade. He has to renounce his trade kicker. That would mess up any of the trades we just talked about. Yeah, it's like $2.5 million if you add it in there. So he would have to say, you know what, I just want to be traded.
Okay. Well, yeah. I don't see why he would do that. Yeah, I don't know. That's yeah. No, I mean we'll see. I'm sorry, my phone keeps buzzing because this doesn't make any sense to me. Multiple teams are interested, I guess. I don't. Toronto
Shams always says this stuff. Shams,
he does.
I have seen Shams work it. I've been bumped by Shams here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I have seen how he networks. He will say things that whatever, representatives want him to say. Yeah. So they will say multiple teams are interested, even if multiple teams are not interested. So again, that's just to put stuff out there. Sometimes smoke and mirrors. I understand he has to do that where he's at in his position so that he can actually get the Luka Doncic news before everyone else, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand that. So, but again, I don't know how many teams, like you said, are really interested in a 37-year-old James Harden, who, according to Bobby Marks, will be costing a team 42.3. Oh, the second season is a player option. So the second season is a player option at $42.3 million. And it says, parentheses, $13.3 million guarantee, which kind of doesn't make sense to me. I want to look at this further because according to, again, I said Bobby Marks, it says it's a player option, but it's only a partial guarantee. So I don't get that. Is it? Yeah, that's I'm looking at Spot Track right now. Spot Track is my friend. What does Spot Track tell me right here?
I'm doing the same exact thing.
Okay, so it's a player option, 26-27 player option, 13 guaranteed. Fully guaranteed in July. Okay, so it's guaranteed deadline 6/29 of 25. Huh? For last, do you see what I'm saying as far as the Spot Track? 26-27 player option, 13 million for 26-27 guaranteed. Deadline was 6/29/25 and fully guaranteed on July 11th.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is maybe he has like a summer guarantee date on every year of his contract right now.
I guess so. And it is a player option. It's listed as a player option. So again, it's kind of messy. I'm sure it gets clarified. It'll be clarified come July the 12th. So we'll have to wait until.
Yeah, I mean, I just plugged in, and you can do Quickly and Abaji for Harden and Yannick Conan Niederhauser, who I guess is a rookie. Maybe they wouldn't want to trade him, but it's a pretty seamless trade, to be honest, for Toronto. I mean, it also says on here he can veto the trade, which means even more he's going to have say in where he wants to go. But we'll see. I mean, the Knicks don't make you like looking at the big teams. The Knicks don't make any sense. Thunder don't make any sense. The Spurs don't make any sense. The Rockets make sense, but I don't think Ime wants to bring him back, or they would have a few years ago instead of Van Vliet, when that was kind of their choice, is they opted for Van Vliet instead of Harden as free agent. Like Boston doesn't make sense. The Lakers don't make sense. The Spurs don't make sense. So, I mean, it's going to be a weird team. I don't know who it is.
I'm telling you, don't underestimate Cleveland. And then I think you called it on Orlando, and it would be for Suggs because they fit right close enough together that you can make it work. And then Cleveland, the same thing. If Cleveland really sees the foot as a long-term problem for Darius Garland. And again, we're not inside for the medical team on Cleveland, so they may see something that we don't when they look at the x-rays. But I definitely think that Suggs is a possibility because it's a long contract. It's a long contract for Suggs. And
yeah, if anything, you'd think it would be the Clippers. That would be like, we don't necessarily, but I don't know. They seem to have a weird thing with Suggs where, again, like I cover in OKC, I get it with like from the outside looking in, it's like, why wouldn't you just trade Dort for Trey Murphy? What are you talking about? Like, of course you would. But then if you follow the team, you know, it's weird. I think that's how Orlando is with Suggs, but I don't know. Like I said, I mean, I guess it's already basically Tuesday. I mean, we'll find out by Thursday where he's going, but if it made it this far, he's going somewhere. So, I don't know. I don't know where that is. I think Orlando, for a lot of sense, if I was an older player, I'd want to go to Orlando. No state income tax. They're a good young team. It's a nice place to live. I think he's about to have a second kid, so who knows if that factors in living in Florida. I don't know. He's from LA, so that kind of surprises me that he's trying to get out of LA. But I don't know. This is weird. This is not one I thought we'd be talking about today. I kind of just thought James Harden would ride into the sunset as a Clipper.
Well, you said you wanted something, and now you got it.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. It's interesting. It's actually thought provoking, which most of these haven't been. It's just been like, oh well, okay.
Well, he is overdue. He is overdue because he was in 21, according to Bobby Marks, the timeline. January 2021, he's traded to Brooklyn. February 2022, traded to Philadelphia. The next year, November 2023, he was traded to the Clippers. So he's actually, when you look at it, a little overdue. So
he's like, it's so weird that the two guys who were with their teams for forever were him and Westbrook, and now they're just floating for different reasons, obviously, but they're just bouncing from team to team to team to team to team to team here into their career. Yeah.
But before we head on out, please go ahead and let everybody know what you're doing in the Swab Report, a detailed analysis of what's gone on right now with the OKC Thunder and what they might possibly need, according to your new article.
Yeah, I mean, I just I wrote this after the Minnesota game, and now it looks somewhat foolish. I mean, I went over already. I don't necessarily think it does after the Denver result, but I just think that last year OKC, as many teams have, they benefited from injuries to opponents. Most teams win the championship do at some time or another. I don't think that's something that OKC has exclusively; no one else does. But they benefited from that, and it was a weird West. And now the West this year is worlds better, and they're going to have to go through Houston or San Antonio or Denver or even I think probably like the Knicks are probably this year. Whoever. The Pacers were so odd. I don't know. They were so good after January 1st. Maybe they were just an elite team, and clearly they were in the playoffs. But yeah, so I thought the last year Oklahoma City, as a lot of teams do, they just had some things break their way. And despite the fact that OKC last year in the playoffs was 11th in team 3-point shooting at like 32% during the playoffs, they were able to win the title. And I just don't think if they do that again this year, they'll be able to. And their shooting has really regressed this year as a team. It's been pretty bad outside of Shea's hovering right around 39-40%. Isaiah Joe's having a really good year individually. But, I mean, other than that, like Dort's down and Wallace is down and Crusoe's down and Chet doesn't shoot enough. And they need more shooting. And after that Minnesota game, I just really thought that I just should put an opinion out there about it. And I kind of went into detail about why I thought for basketball and with this new apron, you got to think about tax stuff. It really made sense both money-wise and in terms of basketball. I thought for them to make a big move for Trey Murphy or any shooter. It goes on to say any shooter, but the one I focused the most on is Trey Murphy. The Thunder could trade like Alex Crusoe, and it could be him and Ousmane Dieng or him and Kenrich Williams or whoever. I think Kenrich Williams is a little too integral. In the piece, I say Jalen Williams, the center, Jay Will. He's really also pretty key to what they do in the locker room, so I don't necessarily know. That might have been a little overzealous. I think they'd be pretty hard up to trade him and Kenrich Williams both, but Ousmane Dieng slots right in there. You could do like Caruso and him. If for the long term, that makes more sense because Caruso's under contract over that duration for the same thing. He's about $8 million cheaper than Trey Murphy, which you can make up somewhere else and stay at what they want to do with the tax. And then really it just kind of delves into more on the numbers of SGA when he has shooting in his career and how good the offenses have been. And yeah, I mean, I just think OKC needs to add a shooter. And I think I also say in there, at least I said in my tweeting it out, I don't think the Thunder will do this now. Maybe it's off season. Still, I don't think the Thunder are not a huge move organization. That's not really how they operate. But I do think, like I said, I do think Ousmane Dieng will get traded somewhere. And I even if that's to Utah for like Svi Mykhailiuk, the OKC just needs to add shooting. They need it desperately. They did last year and they were able to survive even without adding it.
Svi, yes, right there, man. Most famous to know as far as draft night when Jay Billis ripped on him for his short arms.
Yeah, well, Jay, he's hung around a lot longer than anyone thought he was going.
He's got a title with Boston.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'd like to see OKC maybe do something like that because I think that just makes sense. That's a trade that just makes sense for both teams. Mykhailiuk's been at OKC before. He, I think, has 1 year left after this one, so he's not on an expiring contract. Ousmane Dieng is on an expiring contract, and I do think that Ousmane Dieng is a talented guy. I've said this a couple times. This does not feel like, when I watch him play, it doesn't feel like Poku to me. Poku is like a baby deer running around. Like Ousmane Dieng, I think is a functional basketball player. I think he could still be an in-the-league basketball player, but he needs somewhere he can go play consistently, and we're better than Utah.
I like Poku. I'm sorry.
You know, he was fun. He was fun to watch at that time because the whole point was to be bad. It was great, but he didn't make it. He made it half a season when the pressure cooker got turned on, and then he was in Charlotte, and now he's back in Greece. So, you know, it went probably the most likely way for it to go for Poku, which was it didn't work out, and he ended up back in Greece.
Well, again, if you want to check out the great work that he's doing, please check out his latest article, Calif's article, at, of course, the Suave Report, indeed. Well, Calif, at least we got a little tidbit of news. Yes, a little tidbit of news. I guess, Bobby's talking about Dominic Barlow because he's having a good game for Philadelphia against the Clippers right now. So, again, it is, of course, the NBA observations right here at the Lakers Fast Break. Please keep an eye on what's going on with the Lakers Fast Break right here by liking and subscribing. Make sure you guys go ahead and take care of us there. It is greatly appreciated when you do. I've also got the Lakers latest for the Fan Arc Network that I cover, and also as well what's going on with all week long, the NBA trade deadline. We'll keep you abreast of what's going on. We're going to have our trade deadline special. You're invited if you want to stop on by. So on Thursday, we're going to be there for a couple hours, hopefully not doing this.
I would be interested in that if I can. I'm going to be in Iowa City doing some girls wrestling state tournament coverage up here. So I don't know if I'll be available. But if I am, I'd be interested for sure.
Just hit me up. Yeah, we'll be on the air. We'll be hopefully actually talking about it. Although it's funny because the famous trade deadline we did was a few years back with Laker Tom, who's now 82, 81, or something like that. But he was so mad at Rob Pelinka for doing nothing. He got so angry. He went on such a rant. You know, Joe Soro, he does his rants all the time. He does it almost like on a command deal. Here, Joe, here, rant now. Laker Tom was so angry because he does mock trades all year long. That's all he does is mock trades all year on Twitter, on Lakerholics.com. And he was so upset at Rob Pelinka, and he was shouting expletives. He was just, and I thought he was going to literally keel over on camera. And I was just like, because he's had a heart attack before. He has a pacemaker. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have someone die on the air on my channel. And I was just, but it was so classic. It was so classic. I have my hand on my mouse, put it over the button that says hide on stream the entire time while he was doing it. So it was just hilarious. So again, I'm hoping there's going to be some type of activity. Maybe there will be a little bit of a flurry, but we'll see. But now the spices of things a little bit more with James Harden. But if you guys have any thoughts, leave it in the comments below. But yes, Caleb, you're welcome to join us then. I'm thinking about doing a preview special on the Wednesday night if I can as well. So you're welcome to stop on by there too, where we'll go over some mock trades of our own and see what we can do there. But yes, doing a whole bunch of stuff for you guys this week on NBA trade deadline. Will it amount to anything for the Lakers and the NBA? We'll find out if it's just all smoke and mirrors or if there's actually some real deals that we can sink into, not named Sacramento. We'll find out right here for you at NBA Observations.